The physical exam is the clinician's foundational skill, a process that transforms the patient's subjective story into objective, tangible findings. It serves to validate diagnostic hypotheses, detect subclinical disease, and provides an irreplaceable means of monitoring treatment response over time. Beyond pure diagnostics, the ritual of the examination is itself a powerful therapeutic act. The careful, respectful touch of a thorough exam solidifies the doctor-patient alliance, communicating commitment and building essential trust. We begin with the core principles that precede the hands-on assessment. First, ensure an optimal environment, a private, warm room with good lighting. Have all necessary equipment, your stethoscope, otoscope, reflex hammer, and pen light, ready and sanitized. Adopt a patient-centered approach. Explain each step of the process, obtain verbal consent, and be consistently mindful of patient comfort and dignity. A non-negotiable rule is to perform hand hygiene both before initiating and after completing the exam. The examination effectively begins the moment you see the patient with what is known as the general survey. Think of this as your inspection at the door. It is a rapid, integrated assessment that includes, first, the vital signs. The quantitative baseline of temperature, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, and oxygen saturation. Next, observe the patient's global appearance, their apparent state of health. Do they look well or unwell? Note any signs of distress in their posture or facial expression, and assess nutritional status for signs of weight loss or obesity. Finally, evaluate behavior and cognition. Determine their level of consciousness, often using a simple scale where you note if they are alert, responsive to your voice, responsive to pain, or completely unresponsive. Also note their speech pattern and apparent mood. To conduct a thorough and efficient exam, you must follow a systematic head-to-toe sequence. Adhering to a consistent order is critical. It prevents accidental omissions, improves your efficiency, and minimizes the need for the patient to repeatedly change position, which can be taxing. A standard logical flow proceeds from the general survey and vital signs to the skin, then the head, eyes, ears, nose, and throat exam, followed by the neck, the cardiovascular and pulmonary systems, the abdomen, a screening neurological exam, and finally the musculoskeletal system as indicated by the history. The entire exam is built upon 4 core techniques, applied in varying order depending on the body region. The first and most continuously used is inspection. This is purposeful, careful observation. It is often the most revealing technique. Look deliberately for abnormalities in color, symmetry, movement, and form. The second technique is palpation, using the sense of touch to assess texture, temperature, moisture, organ size and consistency, and areas of tenderness. Use the flat part of your fingers for fine touch and the side of your hand to better detect vibrations. The third technique is percussion, tapping on the body's surface to elicit sounds that reflect the density of the underlying tissue. Key sounds to know are tympany, a loud, drum-like sound heard over air-filled structures like the stomach. Hyperresonance, a very loud, lower-pitched sound found in conditions like emphysema or a collapsed lung. Dullness, a medium-pitched, thud-like sound over solid organs like the liver. And flatness, a soft, high-pitched sound over very dense tissue like muscle. The fourth technique is auscultation, listening, always with a stethoscope, to sounds generated by the body, such as heart tones, breath sounds, and bowel sounds. This requires a quiet environment and practiced knowledge of normal versus abnormal sound profiles. Let's apply these techniques in a regional approach, starting with the upper body. Begin with a general inspection of the skin, hair, and nails. Look for paleness, a bluish tint called cyanosis, the yellowing of jaundice, rashes, or any lesions. Palpate for temperature, check for swelling in dependent areas like the front of the shins and the lower back, and assess skin elasticity as a marker of hydration. Next is the head, eyes, ears, nose, and throat exam. For the head, inspect for symmetry and signs of trauma, then palpate the skull and the arteries near the temple. For the eyes, test visual acuity with an eye chart if available, Check peripheral vision by confrontation. Assess how the pupils respond to light and when focusing on a close object, often noted as pupils equal, round, and reactive to light and accommodation, and test the movements of the eyes in all directions. Look into the back of the eye with an ophthalmoscope to check for the red reflex and to visualize the optic nerve head. For the ears, use the otoscope to examine the ear canal for wax or redness and visualize the eardrum, noting its color, landmarks, and the cone of light reflection. For the nose and sinuses, inspect the nasal lining for color and discharge and press over the cheekbones and forehead to check for sinus tenderness. For the throat and mouth, inspect the lips, the inside of the cheeks, the teeth, and the very back of the throat, including the tonsils. Now, examine the neck. Systematically palpate all lymph node areas, in front of and behind the ear, at the back of the skull, along the large neck muscle, and above the collarbone. Note their size, tenderness, mobility, and firmness. For the thyroid gland, first inspect the neck for a visible swelling. Then, to palpate, stand behind the patient, place your fingers on either side of the windpipe, and ask the patient to swallow a sip of water. Feel for the gland rising under your fingers, noting its size, any lumps, or tenderness. Finally, assess the carotid arteries in the neck, feeling one side at a time for strength and rhythm, and listening with your stethoscope for whooshing, sounds called bruits, which can indicate turbulent blood flow. Moving to the lungs and the back of the chest, begin with inspection of the chest wall shape for abnormalities. Check that both sides expand equally with a breath, and observe the breathing pattern for increased rate or abnormal rhythms. On palpation, assess for vibrations felt on the chest wall when the patient says a phrase like 99. Increased vibrations can suggest a solid, airless area in the lung, while decreased vibrations can suggest fluid between the lung and chest wall. Also check for any tenderness over the ribs. Then, percuss the chest wall, comparing side to side to identify areas of abnormal dullness or hyperresonance. Finally, auscultate the lung fields. Listen in a systematic pattern, comparing symmetric points on the back and front. Identify the quality of the breath sounds. Are they the normal, soft rustling sounds, or are they harsher, tubular sounds heard over areas of pneumonia, or are they absent? Critically, listen for added sounds, fine or coarse crackling sounds, suggesting fluid or scarring, high-pitched whistling sounds called wheezes, indicating narrowed airways, low-pitched gurgling sounds called raunchy from secretions, and the grating sound of a pleural rub from inflamed lung linings. We now shift to the core and lower body, starting with the heart and the front of the chest. Inspect the area over the heart for any visible movements or pulsations. On palpation, locate the point of maximal impulse, typically felt in the space between the 5th and 6th ribs on the left side, and assess its character. Feel for sustained lifts and for thrills, which are the buzzing sensations of a murmur you can feel. For auscultation, listen methodically in 4 classic valve areas. The aortic area at the second right intercostal space near the sternum, the pulmonic area at the second left intercostal space, the tricuspid area at the lower left sternal border, and the mitral area at the very tip of the heart near the left nipple line. Use both the flat diaphragm and the cup-shaped bell of your stethoscope at each location. Identify the first and second heart sounds, the lub-dub. Listen carefully for extra sounds like a third or fourth heart sound, clicks, or the scratchy sound of a pericardial rub. If a murmur is present, characterize when in the heartbeat cycle it occurs, where it is loudest, if it spreads to another area, and its loudness graded on a scale from 1, very faint, to 6, which can be heard with a stethoscope off the chest. The abdominal exam requires a specific, non-negotiable order to avoid altering findings. First inspect, then auscultate, then percuss, then palpate. Begin with inspection of the abdomen's contour. Is it flat, sunken, or swollen? Look for scars, stretch marks, visible gut movements, pulsations, or bulges that could be hernias. Next, before disturbing the abdomen, perform auscultation. Listen for bowel sounds in all 4 quadrants, noting their frequency and character. Also, listen for whooshing vascular sounds over the main abdominal artery and near the kidneys. Then, percuss the abdomen to map out the organs. Determine the liver size by percussing from the lung resonance down to the dullness of the liver. A normal span is 6 to 12 centimeters. Percuss for the stomach's air bubble and for the spleen's dull area. If fluid in the abdomen is suspected, test for shifting dullness by having the patient roll on their side. Finally, perform palpation. Start with light palpation in all quadrants to identify areas of superficial tenderness. Then perform deep palpation to feel for enlarged organs. Attempt to feel the edge of the liver and spleen. Identify any masses. Check for specific tenderness, such as in the right lower quadrant. Conclude by assessing for signs of peritonitis. Check for pain when you quickly release pressure, called rebound tenderness, and for involuntary tightening of the abdominal muscles, or guarding. Conduct a screening neurological exam. Start with mental status. Confirm the patient is alert and oriented to who they are, where they are, the time, and their situation. Perform a brief check of the cranial nerves. Test peripheral vision for the second cranial nerve. Eye movements for the third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerves. Facial sensation for the fifth cranial nerve. Facial symmetry for the seventh cranial nerve. The gag reflex and voice for the ninth and 10th cranial nerves. And tongue protrusion for the 12th cranial nerve. For the motor system, test strength on a 0 to 5 scale in major muscle groups: shoulder, elbow, grip, hip, knee, and ankle. Observe the patient's walk. For sensory function, test light touch and sharp versus dull sensation in the hands and feet. Test deep tendon. Reflexes at the elbow, knee, and ankle, grading their response. Check the sole of the foot for the Babinski reflex. Finally, assess coordination with tests like having the patient touch their nose with their finger, then your finger, run their heel down their opposite shin, and perform rapid hand movements. In practice, you must tailor the exam based on the patient's age and chief complaint, focusing your depth on relevant systems. Incorporate special tests when indicated by the history, such as checking for pain when the patient takes a deep breath while you press under the right rib cage. Upon concluding, close the exam professionally. Thank the patient, assist them, and provide a brief, clear explanation of any initial findings and the logical next steps. Finally, accurate documentation is paramount. Record all positive and relevant negative findings using precise standard medical terminology. This creates an essential legal record and a crucial baseline for comparison in future encounters, completing the cycle of clinical assessment. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.